Number 6 first base prospect for Scott the Statline Mile 2024. It's a new name, Jonathon Long for the Chicago Cubs. We have a few names sprinkled in here that do not have as much minor league experience as others coming up, but Long is a little different story. 2023 pick for the Cubs, 9th rounder, 266 overall from Long Beach State. For those of you that don't know, Long Beach State has produced a good baseball program over the last few years. Long in 2024 had 406 at-bats, 17 home runs, 70 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. He hit 283 with a 391 on base percentage. He is liked by the model, obviously coming in at number 6. His peak projection is a 115.1 WRC plus, a 253 average, a 341 on base percentage, slugging 439, 23 home runs, 3 stolen bases with an 11% walk rate and a 24% K rate. Doc, I know very little about Long, at least until we brought him into the equation for number 6 on the list. Being a Chicago Cub, how much opportunity will be there is kind of a question. He's listed at 5'11", 210. He is 22 years old, will be 23 in January. What are your thoughts on Long?
Yeah, man, he's one of these guys who I'd heard a couple, whispers about last year. It's worth noting I'm drinking out of a glass Coca-Cola thing, in case anyone's wondering. This does make it taste better.
Where do you buy those? My wife was literally just asking about that.
Meyer. I go into Meyer, which is coming out of that's a Michigan brand. I'm in Indiana, so I guess we're close enough. We get the glass Coca-Cola. Anyway, that's a little sidebar. And Jonathon Long, which buys me time to think about what I'm going to say about him, because I don't really know a whole ton about him. I'm embarrassed. I've been meaning to look him up because I saw him on our list. The buzz has been growing, and frankly, and I don't even know why it's been growing. Is because first base ain't what it used to be, so people are just clinging to anything useful. When your number one model guy is Tre Morgan, who everyone's bored about, no one really wants him that badly. Like, you have to have some other guys coming up. We just went out over some studs, but Jonathon Long, you can I would say go out and knock on some doors. Check what his cost might be, because he seems exciting. He kind of struggled at high A to begin this year. Only a 247 batting average, but an encouraging 346 OBP. Still 22-year-old at high A. You're like, okay, well, what do you got at double A? Got thrown into there for 46 games, and the ratios both went way up, like 100 points up each, like really 340 batting average kind of style. And so, and it's, I don't know what happened there. I don't know where he was playing, but I mean, I can see where he was playing. I don't know what their park's like in Tennessee, but 17 home runs overall on the year, 114 games, pretty solid power. Yeah, I don't know. He's a weird guy. Like, that's solid, but then you start thinking about, okay, well, he's a little bit older for a lot of those home runs. I'm thinking on the go right now, folks. Max. I like to usually put it out. What would that be over 160? Okay, maybe 25. But then you put him in the MLB, okay, maybe more like 18 to 20. What is he? Who is he? He's got some development to do, I'm sure. I wouldn't say expect him up next year. I would say it's interesting that in the Arizona Fall League, I'm seeing he played 5 games at first base and 10 at third base. They have more of a whole. I never had a good feeling with Christopher Morel. I was never really in on him. I acknowledge his upside, but there's too much. It's just not. It's such a risky profile, in my opinion. And so I think you're going to see Matt Shaw probably get the first shot at that in spring this year, third base. I wouldn't rule out Jonathon Long, but yeah, I think he just needs a little bit more time. Only 46 games in the upper minors, for a relatively unheralded. When was he drafted? 9th round prospect. Kudos to Jonathon Long. He's on this list right after some studs. I think, me and Matt, we play in 30-team leagues. We're not super up to date on Jonathon Long. We should be more up to date on Jonathon Long. That said, imagine what the league, the guy who has Jonathon Long, first of all, if you don't play in a 30-team league, Jonathon Long is probably not even rostered.
Yep.
But check your 30-team leagues. The people who acquired him probably got him in the last round of their FYPDs or something, or just picked him up on a flyer late last year after seeing his power numbers. So, yeah, I mean, inquire, because I don't think he's going to be untouchable.
Well, and looking at the stat line, right? Scouting the stat line here to our ownership group, he had an incredible finish to his year. You talked about the promotion to Double A, 46 games. He had 7 home runs. He batted 340, a 455 on base percentage. I mean, those are incredible numbers.
Mhm.
Now, translate that to what he also did with Mesa in the Arizona Fall League, 18 games, 6 home runs, 338 average, 425 on base percentage. There's a very slight chance that we could be witnessing a massive breakout. I don't know. I don't have enough data yet because if you look at his peak season at Long Beach State, 55 games, 15 home runs, 312 batting average, kind of whatever. There's a reason he was a 9th round pick. He has never shown this stretch that he's had in the last, say, 70 games ish. But from Double A in the Fall League, we're talking about very consistent numbers against better competition, at least in Double A. Fall League is arguable, right? We can get on a year-to-year basis about that. But I am way more intrigued after just breaking his stat line down than I was, when I added him to this list.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of skipped over his power in Arizona Fall League. And frankly, I skipped over all of his numbers because his Double A numbers were just so steady as it was. I think I'm more impressed. I'm at least as impressed with Double A numbers as I am Arizona Fall League numbers these days.
Okay.
I will say that Arizona Fall League is interesting to me because it's more recent.
Yeah.
It's the most recent, and so that's certainly not a bad thing. You don't not want that on your side. So it's nice to see that it went from Double A. Was that a flash in the pan? Was it not? Then you see him come back for Arizona Fall League. He's doing more of the same. That's pretty exciting. So he's in a set. That's probably the reason I kept saying, I've heard of him. I keep hearing about him. I know I'm supposed to look into him. It's probably because he's been lighting up Arizona Fall League. And so, yeah, I was kind of out of the mix there, folks, for the month of October, if anyone's following me. But we apparently missed a lot of Jonathon Long, and I think you should check to see if your league mates have been doing that.
Okay, so before we move on real quick, how would you target him in a league if he is owned? Are you going to go about it with are you targeting first and foremost, and then secondly, is he a throw-in guy that you hope the owner doesn't, kind of in the same situation before you and I talked about him today, or are you actually targeting him for, a mid-level prospect swap?
Well, it's interesting, right? I think with these guys who are ascending assets, but they're not that high value. What are you offering? Like one-on-one? Like I was going after Noah Cameron the other day, yesterday. I was going after Noah Cameron, and then I realized, he also has Bryce Eldridge and Mark Vientos, and I went for some crazy blockbuster offer, and it worked. By the end of it, no one's even talking about Noah Cameron, who actually I think Noah Cameron could be in the Royals rotation this year very easily to start the year. And then with Jonathon Long here, if you go after him one-on-one, now the guy is digging into Jonathon Long. He's digging into Noah Cameron. Right? You start looking at the articles, you look at the news headlines, and it's only good things they're hearing. Like, he's an ascending talent. Who is this guy? So unless you have a similar-ish player at another position who's also having a lot of good buzz, maybe kind of an under-the-radar asset, or the other GM, underrated. This is an underrated aspect of your leagues, by the way. If another GM is actually a fan of a certain team, and you have one of those prospects, you know what I'm saying? Like, know your league. But I would say a guy like Jonathon Long, yeah, you might want to get him as like a throw-in. Maybe you don't have to go for a Vientos or a Eldridge, but go for more of like a mid-tier player. Make that the focal point of the trade. And then let's say like a Yandy Diaz is involved. I would never trade for him, but let's just say you wanted him. And then you add Jonathon Long in there, and you throw in like a top, and your offering is a top 75 prospect or something like that. Or maybe it's a number 50 prospect, which in a deeper league for Diaz and Long, I'm probably pulling the trigger if I have Long and Diaz, because I'm probably not really excited about Diaz, right? Like, oh, cool. Someone takes this boring guy off my hands. Oh, and Long, he seems like he's been cool lately, but yeah, he's just a random guy, 9th round pick. You know what I'm saying? You don't want them thinking about how good Long's been lately.